Welcome to episode number 11 of Sales with Value.
Yes.
That right there, that exact line is the starting point for our journey today.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're looking at something entirely different today.
We really are.
It's a highly specialized piece of source material that gives us a rare window into the mechanics of behavioral change. We actually have our hands on a detailed production blueprint and the raw script metadata for a fast-moving consumer goods sales training video. Specifically, this is geared toward the snacks industry.
Right, the snack industry.
And our mission today is to unpack the hidden strategies of retail sales by analyzing exactly how this training module was constructed from the ground up. We want to look at the psychological choices made by its creator.
The intention behind the video.
Exactly. And the core question we are exploring for you today, which actually matches the title of the training itself, is, can you give importance to small orders? It is an exceptionally layered piece of source material to analyze. To set the stage for you, what we're looking at is essentially the behind-the-scenes architectural framework of a highly targeted piece of corporate communication.
Yeah.
This training material is explicitly designed for Hindi-speaking distributor salesmen.
Right.
These are the individuals operating on the absolute front lines of the retail economy. They're facilitating the movement of goods from large distributors to individual shops.
Which is a tough job.
Incredibly tough.
Yeah.
And the blueprint strictly mandates a tight 7 to 8 minute video duration.
Only 7 to 8 minutes.
Right. And perhaps the most critical parameter established right at the top of the document is the required tone. The production notes dictate that it must be practical, human, professional.
Practical, human, professional.
That three-word directive serves as the foundational philosophy for everything we will discuss today. Every single visual, the pacing, the structural choices in this blueprint, they're all engineered to service that specific tone.
Having access to the raw design instructions is just fascinating because you get to see the deliberate choices made before a single frame is ever shot.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this overarching visual theme. The production document explicitly calls for Indian retail market realism.
Yes.
We are not starting in some sleek, sterile corporate boardroom or an artificially lit studio.
No, definitely not.
The blueprint demands that the opening visual is a bustling Indian street market montage. So right from the first second, the trainee is thrust into immediate chaotic reality.
And we have to examine why that choice is so crucial from an instructional design perspective.
Yeah, why do that?
Well, to train a distributor salesman effectively, you have to acknowledge their operating environment.
Right.
Their daily reality is loud, it's highly competitive, it's often physically demanding, and visually overwhelming.
Visually overwhelming is a great way to put it.
Because if a corporation presents a pristine artificial setting, say, a quiet, perfectly organized mock store, they instantly lose credibility with the viewer.
Right, the viewer just tunes out.
Exactly.
The practical, human, professional tone demands that the trainee sees their actual, unvarnished world reflected back at them. Opening with a bustling street market montage functions as a psychological handshake. It immediately signals to the salesman watching, we understand the ecosystem you operate in.
Yeah.
We know what you're up against. This training is grounded in the reality of the street, not the theory of the boardroom. It establishes undeniable authenticity before any actual sales concepts are even introduced.
That authenticity seems incredibly deliberate, especially when you look at the restrictions placed on the creators.
The avoid list.
The avoid list, yes.
Yeah.
The document includes a very specific avoid list. It strictly mandates avoiding brand logos.
That's just wild.
Right, avoiding aggressive graphics and avoiding fast, distracting transitions.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this avoid list, and it strikes me as a massive departure from industry norms. Usually, corporate FMCG training heavily indexes on brand reinforcement.
Oh, absolutely. They want their logos highly visible, alongside heavily stylized visual stimuli. Stripping all of that away feels like a calculated risk. Doesn't removing the corporate branding risk disconnecting the training from the company's core identity?
What's fascinating here is the sophisticated understanding of cognitive load demonstrated by the creators.
Cognitive load.
By explicitly removing aggressive graphics and fast cuts, the training forces the salesman's attention entirely onto the core interaction and the mechanics of the sale.
Right.
Highly stylized corporate marketing visuals are inherently distracting. They pull the viewer out of the human element and remind them that they're watching a corporate broadcast.
Which breaks that realism you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. By avoiding brand logos and opting instead for clean retail shelf visuals, the video intentionally elevates the technique over the brand.
Wow.
It sends a subtle but powerful message to the salesman that the interpersonal skill of the negotiation is what matters most in this context.
It maintains that human and practical tone.
By stripping away anything that feels artificially slick or overly produced, which in turn lowers the cognitive barrier to entry for the trainee. They aren't deciphering complex charts. They are observing human behavior.
So if the visual style is entirely stripped back to match the salesman's chaotic reality,
Yeah.
what exactly are we watching happen in that environment? Who are they talking to?
The main event.
That brings us to the narrative core of the video. The blueprint centers the visual elements entirely on a Kirana store interaction.
Yes.
For you listening, if you aren't familiar with the landscape of Indian retail, a Kirana store is a traditional, small neighborhood shop.
Very small.
They are ubiquitous, tightly packed, and shelf space is at an absolute premium. The shopkeeper is typically managing multiple things at once and is incredibly busy. The script section focuses tightly on a salesman talking directly to the shopkeeper over the counter.
The Kirana store is arguably the ultimate battleground for FMCG sales.
The battleground, yeah.
We are talking about an environment where 90% of the retail sector is unorganized, meaning these independent stores drive the vast majority of volume.
Wow.
Every square inch of retail shelf or a hanging display strip in those stores is fiercely contested territory among rival brands.
They're fighting for literally inches of space.
Exactly. So when the source material highlights snack packets on retail shelves as a core visual element, it is focusing the trainee's mind on the ultimate prize: visibility and placement in a highly constrained physical space. The interpersonal dynamic between the salesman and the shopkeeper in this cramped, high-pressure environment is the fulcrum upon which the entire FMCG supply chain rests.
Looking at the visual instructions for this interaction, it presents a strategy that feels entirely counterintuitive to traditional sales quotas.
It really is.
The source details a specific story visual. It mandates showing the salesman giving a small trial order to the shopkeeper.
A small order.
Right. When you think about the pressure these distributor salesmen are under to hit aggressive volume targets, presenting a small trial order almost looks like the training is asking them to intentionally undersell on day one.
Yes.
Shouldn't their objective be to offload as much inventory as possible during every single store visit?
That is the traditional volume-driven mindset.
Yeah.
And it's precisely the instinct this training is attempting to recalibrate.
Recalibrate.
Right after that story visual of the small trial order, the document dictates a learning visual. That visual shows a retail shelf gradually filling with snack products.
Gradually.
That word gradually is the operative concept for this entire deep dive. The strategy being taught here leans heavily on the psychological principle of the foot-in-the-door technique.
Oh, I see.
If a salesman walks into a cramped Kirana store and demands massive shelf space or a huge capital outlay from the shopkeeper on day one, the natural response is rejection. The financial risk for the shopkeeper is too high, especially for a new or unproven snack product. However, proposing a small, almost negligible trial order bypasses the shopkeeper's defensive threshold. It removes the friction from the transaction.
It mitigates the financial risk for the shopkeeper while still securing a physical foothold in the store.
Precisely. It builds foundational trust. The small order is a low-stakes test of the product's viability and the salesman's reliability.
Right. It's a test.
Once that initial small order sells through, the trust is established. The shopkeeper sees the consumer demand and the tangible profit. And that successful microtransaction eventually leads to the gradual filling of the shelf space over time.
That makes total sense.
The training is trying to shift the salesman's focus from a single high-resistance transaction to a series of low-resistance compounding interactions.
Here's where it gets really interesting in terms of instructional design. How they ensure this counterintuitive strategy actually sticks in the viewer's brain.
The graphics.
Yes, the document outlines a very deliberate graphic strategy. Remember, earlier we discussed their mandate to avoid aggressive, flashy graphics.
Right.
Instead, they rely on text highlight for sharpliners. They pair these targeted text highlights with simple animated transitions and clean retail shelf visuals. They seem to be meticulously managing the information flow, ensuring that key lessons like the strategic value of the small trial order anchor themselves in the salesman's memory without overwhelming their working memory.
That is an astute observation regarding working memory. When you're designing a module with a strict 7 to 8 minute runtime, targeting a professional who likely has 50 more store visits to complete that day.
50 visits, yeah.
Cognitive clarity is paramount. Complex data visualizations or aggressively stylized text would actively compete with the core behavioral message.
It's too much noise.
Exactly. By utilizing a simple text highlight for a sharp liner, the instructional designer directs the viewer's eye exactly where it needs to go, emphasizing only the most critical takeaway at that specific moment.
Just the sharp liner.
Yes. The use of simple animated transitions serves to gently guide the viewer from one concept to the next without jarring them visually. It is a highly respectful and efficient way to present information.
Respectful, I like that.
It trusts the intelligence of the viewer, perfectly fulfilling the professional requirement of that initial 3-word tone directive we discussed earlier.
It is a masterclass in addition by subtraction. You strip away the peripheral noise so the core signal is impossible to miss.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the climax of the blueprint. The final visual, mandated by this script, delivers a very specific punch.
The big reveal.
The screen is instructed to show bold text that translates to big sales from small orders. That is the ultimate distilled takeaway meant to be burned into the screen and the viewer's mind.
Yes.
So what does this all mean? How do we synthesize the true strategic weight of this training module for you, the listener, based on everything we've unpacked?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the seemingly straightforward 7 to 8 minute video is profoundly subversive within the context of its industry.
Subversive.
In an FMCG sector that is historically obsessed with immediate volume and aggressive monthly targets, this training advocates for a highly sophisticated long game. It is a masterclass in patience and relationship building.
Right.
It trains the distributor salesman to assign value to incremental steps rather than exclusively swinging for an immediate wide-scale win. It essentially shifts the operational paradigm from how much inventory can I push onto you today
To something much more sustainable.
to how can we initiate a low-risk partnership that gradually results in our brand dominating this retail shelf. It completely redefines what constitutes a successful sales call.
Yeah.
A small order is no longer framed as a failure to sell more.
Yeah.
It is reframed as a calculated strategic victory that paves the way for future sustainable dominance.
I find that reframing incredibly compelling because it aligns the salesman's goals with the shopkeeper's reality.
It really does.
And the blueprint doesn't just end with that bold text appearing on screen. There is one final, subtle production instruction buried in the metadata that I found quite striking.
Oh, the audio padding.
Yes, under the audio padding section, the document explicitly mandates a 3 seconds pause before ending.
3 full seconds.
They didn't just let the video cut to black the millisecond the final words appear. The instruction requires 3 full seconds of audio silence while that bold text big sales from small orders sits statically on the screen.
That 3-second pause is arguably the most critical instructional design choice in the entire document. And it highlights the depth of thought put into this blueprint.
How so?
That pause is not a technical specification for editing software. It is a deliberate psychological breathing space. You have just asked this distributor salesman to fundamentally rethink their daily approach to their job,
Right.
to embrace patience over immediate gratification, and to see small orders as strategic anchors rather than missed opportunities. You must give the adult brain time to process and encode that paradigm shift.
3 seconds to let it process.
That 3 seconds of silence provides the necessary contrast to the chaotic street market audio we heard at the beginning of the video. It allows the core message to truly sink in. It forces a moment of quiet reflection. Before the video ends, the salesman puts their phone back in their pocket, and they step back out into the noise and heat of the next Kirana store visit.
It's the instructional equivalent of letting a complex wine breathe. It ensures the concepts settle before they are put into practice.
Exactly.
So let's look back at the journey we've just taken through these production notes. We've seen how a seemingly simple FMCG training video is actually a highly engineered framework for behavioral change.
It really is.
By insisting on Indian retail market realism and actively avoiding distracting corporate branding, the creators build immediate credibility with a tough audience. They utilize the grounded, high-stakes visual of a traditional Kirana store to root the concepts in reality. And the core lesson, that a disciplined focus on small, low-risk trial orders can completely revolutionize a salesman's approach to capturing retail shelf space, is delivered with absolute clarity. They rely on clean visuals, sharp text liners, and psychological pacing, rather than aggressive corporate graphics.
It demonstrates that sometimes the most effective way to communicate a substantial behavioral shift is through a tightly controlled, deeply human, and highly practical lens.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need a sprawling production budget, celebrity endorsements, or flashy high-tech graphics to change how a workforce operates.
We really don't.
You just need to deeply understand the challenging reality of the person you are communicating with, respect their cognitive capacity, and offer them a practical low-barrier step forward that actually aligns with the constraints of their environment.
Which brings us to a perfect closing thought for you. We've spent this entire deep dive looking at how this methodical, patience-driven strategy works for a distributor salesman fighting for inches of shelf space in a bustling retail market. We've seen how reducing the initial ask leads to a much larger, permanent presence.
Which leaves you with this concept to ponder. If the most effective way to build a substantial, permanent presence in a chaotic, highly competitive environment is through tiny, low-risk trial orders that gradually fill a shelf,
Where else in your own life, in your interpersonal relationships, or in your career trajectory are you losing out by demanding a massive order up front?
what would change if, instead of asking for total commitment or maximum results on day one, you strategically aim to just get a small practical foot in the door and let the results gradually fill the space over time?
An astute question to leave you with, and a powerful way to look at our own daily negotiations. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of influence. We will catch you next time.